All right, so Zach, pretty big fan of your work, man.
Thank
You
you.
are a game maker, so introduce yourself, man.
Yeah, so my name's Zachary McPhink. I run a channel called Level reDesign where we remake games on Unreal Engine 5. I actually started originally because I didn't know Unreal Engine 5. I was a professional worker, professionally working inside of Unity, and I wanted to learn Unreal, get more engines under my belt, and so I started specifically to do that, and now I actually do that professionally. So I haven't even touched Unity in like almost 2 years, but yeah. So
So how many game engines do you have under your belt?
so I mostly have done Unity and Unreal, but I've also messed around with like RPG Maker a little bit. I messed with Godot a little bit. Like I could learn those engines at this point, but yeah, I have the ones I'm specifically trying to really become like an expert at. But yeah, and then this also knowing more engines also makes it easier to like find a job where maybe they have a custom engine. Because it shows you're able to adapt to these different situations.
Yeah, that's pretty cool that you're able to do that so easily, and that you have so many under your belt. I mean,
hmm
that's probably pretty useful.
Yeah, it is. The main thing is like every engine kind of does the same stuff, but they're all called different things. And it's just knowing that like this thing Unity calls an object, but Unreal Engine calls an actor. Stuff like that. It's just a bunch of different naming conventions. Is all.
Yeah, it's kind of like the differences between different video editor tools, kind of.
Yeah.
I invited you and I said, what did you want to talk about? And since you are a professional video game maker,
hmm
you said, let's talk about some game remakes we want.
Yeah.
Why don't you go ahead and pick out your first choice? What do you want
Yes.
remade?
And so I will say most of my games are from the Xbox to Xbox 360 era. I don't remember the gen numbers. Is that 6 and 7, 7 and 8? I don't remember. Anyways, from around that time frame, PS1 games are obviously really good to remake. I didn't pick any of those today. Croc's getting a remake, which was just
I
announced like
saw that. That's
yeah,
exciting.
very recently. Yeah, it looks more like a port to me. I don't know because like Croc was updated, but the environment is the exact same environment. They just put new textures on it.
I think what they did was because Crash Bandicoot and Spyro the Dragon were remade, and those look gorgeous.
Yeah,
But they do have a lot of complexity, I guess, to them. So you have Croc here that's being remade, and it still looks like the
yeah,
PS1 game without losing the appeal of it, I guess. I don't
yeah.
know.
I think it is 100% actually a remake. I'm pretty sure they rewrote the whole code base, which wouldn't be that
Hmm.
hard for Croc. Like, Croc's a pretty simple game, probably more simple than Toy Story. But they did definitely choose a more budget direction for the art, which I don't hate. I think that's fine, especially if it's priced as like a $30 price. But yeah, so I
Hmm.
mean, there'll be some stuff in here that I kind of want the spiral treatment for, and some things I'd like just some upscaled models and textures, and everything else can stay the same. But we'll start with like the first one, which has technically already been remade once because they lost the source code when they ported it to PS3, and that is Kingdom Hearts, specifically the first one. Because the first one on this, the story so far looks pretty chunky compared to the rest. Yeah, I don't know if you know this, but like this was originally on a PS2 game. They ported it to
Hmm.
PS3 and PS4, but they had to remake it on the PS3
I did not
uh,
know that because
because
that's the
yeah,
way
because
that I played it. Was the story so far that you're
yeah,
holding?
yeah, it's basically the same version. Like they used all the art and stuff, but they had to remake it. I think they lost the code base. I may be wrong on that, but it's something along those lines. But yeah, I think it needs like a proper remake. I think two, and all the others, the Birth by Sleep, all those still look fine, and they're like upscaled versions and stuff. But Kingdom Hearts one, I think, could use a remake.
Yeah, I know for me personally, I've always preferred Kingdom Hearts 1 to a degree above
Oh yeah,
2.
wow,
And I think that's just because I spent a lot more time with Kingdom Hearts 1 than I have 2. I'm almost done with 2 because I'm going through the story so far. And I'm enjoying the gameplay of 2. Like, I think it's a lot better, faster paced.
yeah,
It's a little more confusing because it doesn't really go in depth of how the different control schemes work or when you can turn into different versions of Sora. It doesn't really go into how that works. Um, but I love the story of 1, so I definitely agree that deserves a proper like give it the Kingdom Hearts 4 graphics and
yeah.
that would look amazing, I think.
And that's an Unreal Engine game too. So, you know, yeah, I think I prefer the gameplay of 2, but I think 2 and technically the one before it, the one with cards, I don't remember the name of it, but that's where the story started to get a little crazy. Like usually people play Kingdom Hearts 1 like this story isn't that complicated. What's wrong with people always calling it complicated? No, once you get 2 and past that, the story gets really confusing. But I think 1 is just so accessible to newcomers, and it does look pretty chunky, even more so than like the other like DS version that was on this Story So Far collection and stuff. And yeah, I think it deserves the Unreal Engine 5 treatment. But
Have you ever played that Chain of Memories game?
I did. I played every single Kingdom Hearts game. So I will say I started playing Kingdom Hearts around 2020, the very beginning of 2020 or so.
Hey, that's what I started too.
Yeah, because I got it for Christmas from my wife, and and I started playing it like early January, and so I beat them all over the course of about 2 years. I would play one, I would think this is awesome. I'd start the next one. I'd get about 5 hours in. I'm like, okay, I'm actually had enough Kingdom Hearts, and I'd put it down for like 3 months, and then I'd go back to it. Yeah, I really like Kingdom Hearts. So, just so you know, my favorites are Kingdom Hearts 2 and Birth by Sleep. But yeah, one I think if it got like the Final Fantasy treatment, it'd be awesome.
I wish they would do something for that Chain of Memories game, because that one is my favorite gameplay wise. That one
Oh yeah.
blew me away once I finally got it, because it takes a minute to understand how the cards work and how you have to like re-roll them, and every time you re-roll them it gets rid of some cards. But once you understand how it works and you can organize your deck properly, that is one of the funnest gameplay wise in my opinion.
Yeah, I've never been into deck builder games. It's probably why I didn't really care for that. That's probably my least favorite.
Oh really? Okay.
But I didn't dislike it. It's just the game's not for me. Like that and stealth games are not for me. So
If it wasn't for the gameplay, I probably wouldn't have enjoyed it, because it's basically a retelling of the first game
yeah, it is.
over, and especially if you play that back to back, it's very annoying. But I enjoyed the gameplay once I got into it.
Yeah, because it's been a while since I played it. It's basically just it goes. He forgets the memories. He forgets stuff as the game goes on, right?
Yeah,
So, spoiler
and then
alert,
he's like,
but yeah.
"Oh yeah, I remember everything," and that's like the ending.
Yeah, yeah, man, it's so wild.
Yeah. So a lot of my games are taken from that era as well. Some are from the PS1 era. I mostly agree that a lot of the PlayStation 3 era games are in dire need of remakes or proper retooling, because sometimes I don't know what it was, but the graphics don't look that great in my opinion. And I think it kind of suffers from the N64 era almost. Like how some 64 games have that really bad fog effect. I think the PS3 and the 360 have a similar issue to that. I don't know what it is, but going back to some of those games does not look really good in my opinion.
I think it was the era, because that's also around the time everything started being just brown. You know, like in
Yes.
movies, they just love browns. And then also they did that like Vaseline smear effect on like Fable 2, for example. If you play like the emulated version of Fable 2, you can take off that fog. It looks so much better.
Yeah, I don't know. I just never was a fan of those generations of consoles.
Oh wow, man, 360 is my favorite console.
Like, I mean, I like the games and the consoles
Oh, okay,
themselves, but I'm saying, like, in retrospect, a lot of those games do really need a proper retooling,
Yeah.
comparatively wise. So, I guess since with that being said, my first game that I would love to see remade is Uncharted 1. That
Oh.
game is in dire need of a remake. I'm sorry. Like, even going back to the Nathan Drake collection, where they get rid of the motion controls. They get rid of the motion controls when you're throwing a bomb or crossing the ravines and stuff, which is fine. It just doesn't feel that great comparatively wise to the second and the third game, which they really took leaps forward in comparatively wise in the gameplay. It feels very stiff, and I would love like an Uncharted 4 or 5 remake of it.
I would love to see a development documentary of the first game and then also the third game, and just see like what changed, because you know Uncharted 1 was the first huge game that kind of did what it did. Obviously there was Tomb Raider before that, but even Tomb Raider didn't go quite like Nathan Drake did. So I'd love to see if it was just bad, not bad, but so much lower than 2 and 3 because they were figuring everything out. Like to create those cinematic shots, they, what they do is they know exactly where the camera's pointing, and as soon as something's off the camera view, they just turned it off. And they got really efficient with that with 2 3. And I have a suspicion that they didn't quite have that down for 1. And so, and I haven't played 1 in a while. Did they have as many cinematic shots as they did in like 2 and 3, like climbing up the train and that drive through the city?
Playing 2 and 3 and 4, those have so many memorable moments. The first game, all I can remember is that it takes place in the jungle, and you're after the one guy's gold or whatever, and then it makes like a bunch of monkeys at the end of it that you're shooting at. But I don't remember that many moments of it, sadly enough. I just think it needs a proper like reintroduction. You give it some good controls finally, because it's too stiff for my liking. I was playing it and I'm like, I don't get Uncharted. Like, I didn't get Uncharted when I was playing it for the first time. Going back to it, I'm like, I don't get the appeal of this. It's kind of just a generic third-person action adventure. And then that's when you go to the second game and the third game and the fourth game, you're like, oh, okay.
So you think it needs like a full-on like Resident Evil 2 level remake where
it needs a full from the ground up remake, because the Nathan Drake collection looks good. Like, I'm not saying visually wise I'm saying just it needs a proper reintroduction. A few things need to be changed because it was the first of that genre where it was like this big budget action adventure game. So like you were saying, how there's things that are different from the first game to the third game. And then just gameplay wise, I just think it feels way too stiff.
Yeah. I assume they kind of had an idea of what they wanted, and then when they finished 1, they're like, all right, let's change the direction. Let's like make Uncharted this other thing now. Like, these moments in 1 were really cool, but what if we took those further? And then they actually made Nathan Drake into what it is, which is a really cool experience. Like I don't think. You got to think like how influential Nathan Drake is. I think if without Nathan Drake, we never would have gotten God of War 2018, and we never would have gotten
Spider-Man,
Horizon. Yeah, those types of games, we wouldn't have gotten those without Nathan Drake, is my opinion. He was actually really influential. Yeah. So I think that's a really good choice. That's really interesting. So
yeah, when it comes to a lot of those games at that time, that's one that's like almost never brought up, and I'm like, that one needs a proper like overhaul, in my opinion.
Do you think people would be upset if they remade Uncharted 1 instead of just like remastering 2 or 3? Like, what would other people prefer? The general audience.
I don't know. I mean, as a hardcore Uncharted fan, that's what I would want, is a reintroduction of 1 at least. I mean, obviously, I'm like everybody else where it's like, give us Uncharted 5. I mean, you did 4 amazingly. Yeah. You can do 5 just as good. I don't know, to be honest. I think I would rather have a built from the ground up remake of 1 than just a port of 2 and 3 that, makes the frame rate better, makes it look a little bit better, for the PlayStation 5. I would rather have a complete built from the ground up remake.
Okay. That's a really good choice. Well, how about this? This is a crazy one. That have you seen? Do you know? Have you played Psychonauts? I have the ever so exclusive Xbox One version here that basically no one knows exists. But I have Psychonauts. Yeah. I played Psychonauts like 6 years ago, and I don't remember much about it from that playthrough. But I played Psychonauts 2. Pretty much the day it came out, and I 100% it in like 3 days, and it was one of the best gaming experiences I've had in many years before that. Yeah, it came out in that span of 2021 where Xbox released like 6 games in like 5 months, and they didn't release anything else for like another 19-20 months after that. But Psychonauts 2 is incredible. It's a masterpiece. It looks amazing. Psychonauts 1 plays really well. But I would love a visual update to make it look more like 2, because you got like it's a 2005 game, and I think it started development in like the very late 90s or 2000s. There was that really awesome documentary about the development of Psychonauts 1 and 2 called Psych Odyssey by Double Fine. If you've not seen this, you need to check it out on YouTube.
I gotta check it out.
It's awesome. Yeah, but it's one of the that's my favorite piece of media from 2023. But Psychonauts 1, yeah, I would love a visual update. Some of the areas look a little bit dark in my opinion, and it doesn't really pop like the second one does. But yeah, I would love a for this, it would just be like a visual remaster, basically, where you remake all the art, the code base can stay the same, and I'll be happy.
Yeah, that's actually a pretty good choice because I haven't played the second Psychonauts game yet. So I mean, I'm getting to it eventually, but I love the first game. I think that is one of the most unique games of that era. It's kind of like a Beyond Good and Evil
Yeah,
situation where it's like it's a game that came out and was super underrated at the time, and nobody hardly played it. And it's got unique gameplay mechanics. So I agree. I think that game needs a visual overhaul.
yeah. It has an awesome art direction. It's just the actual art itself is low res at this point, which isn't the worst thing. But when you think of how far it could go with its art direction, then that's the only reason why. I forget the guy's name who designed the art. Really cool guy, but yeah, he did a great job keeping it like to where it even looks beautiful today. I would just love a little update to it.
Yeah, that's a game that I think, if I remember correctly, suffers from a bunch of the fog effects of that
Hmm.
era. So
I
I
think so.
agree.
Yeah. Well, what do you got next?
All right, so I did think of the last one, so which was
Okay.
Uncharted. So I got that under control. I got my 8. All right, so for my next one, I'm a massive fan of the PlayStation 1 because when it comes to that era, that's what I grew up with in the early 2000s was the PlayStation 1. My favorite game of all time on that console is Twisted Metal 2.
Ooh.
And I want a built from the ground up remake of that game with online play. I would kill for this. Even if you don't include one, like let's say it's not a Tony Hawk situation where they don't include the first game, I would pay $60 for that easily. It's one of the greatest games of all time, gameplay wise, story wise. I still think it holds up visually wise because they had the port for the PlayStation recently on the 4 and the
Yeah.
5 where you could download it. And they used the PC port, if I'm remembering correctly. And all they did was they made the chunks look fine, so it's not as blurry as it is on PlayStation 1 or 2. And I still think it holds up to this day. I would just love, though, like if they went in and made everything from the ground up, give it online, you have my $70 there day one.
That's a great choice. So the only Twisted Metal I've ever played is Twisted Metal 4, which I
Mm-hmm.
absolutely loved. I've since learned that the story isn't as good as the others
Dude, it's
because
still fun gameplay wise, though.
it is a good gameplay. But I had no idea who Calypso was. Like this Calypso guy just dies at the beginning. I'm like, who's this? What do I care? You know, which I've now since learned. And I've watched the show Twisted Metal on Paramount or whatever it was. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, Twisted Metal is awesome. And there was one in development from PlayStation, and it was like early though, which everyone was pretending like it was like really far along. Apparently, it's kind of early, and Jim Ryan, head of PlayStation, like shut it down before his retirement. But
Yeah, it kept getting delayed and it kept changing wise. Like at first it was online only, then it was going to be virtual reality only, I think. And then it was going to be, what Twisted Metal PS5 you would expect, and then it just got completely ghosted almost. So,
mm,
I don't know. I think you could do pretty well if you did a new Twisted Metal. That's a game like PlayStation's trying to do their online game franchises right now. Like they're really desperate for it. So I
yeah,
think Twisted Metal would be one of their best choices. They could have cosmetics for your characters or your cars. Uh, Throw in like an Overwatch like thing almost. I don't know. You got my money. I mean, it's very easy to do.
yeah. PlayStation 5 had that game that was pretty early after release of the console. It was like a demolition game. I don't know. I've never played it, but I always said that should have just been a Twisted Metal game. Like, why
Mm-hmm.
make a new IP of this when you have something that's like so unique and so loved? Like the fan base for Twisted Metal isn't like crazy huge, but it does seem to be a dedicated fan base. You
They're
know?
ravenous. Like,
Yeah.
what's fun is every Saturday night I have my PlayStation 2 modded where it can play online still, and I play Twisted Metal Black online with a bunch of 40-year-olds from Britain or Finland. It's something really weird, but we have a blast, and we still play PlayStation 2 online. They're ravenous. The Twisted Metal fan base is ravenous. I think that showed with the show, where it was like the most watched show of that month, or for that streaming service. I think they got season 2 coming out, so I don't know what's stopping PlayStation from making a new one or
Yeah.
remaking 1 and 2. You could do a Tony Hawk situation, and they're just not taking advantage of it for some reason.
Yeah, I've had this theory for last several years where, you know, our gaming budgets keep growing and growing and growing, and I think we need to just cut that out for the most part. Leave, your typical like God of Wars and Spider-Man, but why not have like more single A or double A games? Games that cost $10 million to make, and so it's a very low risk, but the reward is much higher. I mean, you could make a Twisted Metal, make it online. You could probably make a Twisted Metal game that people would understand, like it's more of a budget title, like $10 to $15 million, and if it pops off as like a live service, which PlayStation would do, like that's not negotiable. It could easily make that return. So you have a lot less risk, but yeah, I think we need more single A and double A games, and we don't get that right now. We have indie, we have like half A, and then we have triple A, and then of course Sega's like super games, but which are basically quadruple A. But yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of weird, the gaming sphere now. There's either the really big budgets, which is the $200 million games like Horizon Zero Dawn or Spider-Man 2, and then you have indie, basically, like you were saying. And it's kind of sad because I'm having a lot more fun with indie titles lately, like Stardew Valley. Lethal Company took over the world last year, and I'm still playing it to this day with friends. And then you have something like Horizon Zero Dawn 2, which kind of came and went, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah. Funny enough, you mentioned Horizon because that's actually a huge seller. Like among the casual audience, the people who aren't on X and the people who are on Facebook really love Horizon because it's one of PlayStation's highest selling IPs at this point. But you wouldn't know that from the main audience.
Yeah,
Yeah, the first
it's
one sold
kind of
like
like
crazy.
Spider-Man 2. Like Spider-Man 2 just kind of came and went.
Yeah, it was so much better than the first one, but it didn't get much attention.
I haven't
Um,
played it yet. I'm gonna pick it up this holiday just when it's on sale for like $20.
yeah,
I'm getting a lot more smarter. But I mean every once in a while there's a big AAA game that comes along that everyone latches onto. Like Hogwarts Legacy was a big one, but
yep. Elden
I
Ring.
mean, yeah, Elden Ring was a big one, but I don't know. I don't know what's gonna happen to the gaming sphere. It's kind of
Yeah,
scary.
we just need more like $30 million games.
Hmm.
Little inside information: the PS4 Ratchet and Clank game, which a lot of people don't like if you're a Ratchet and Clank fan,
I
because
was
it's the
not.
remake of the first one, but they cut like half the levels. It's actually my favorite PS4 game, but
Really?
yeah, I think it's awesome. But no, but I
Okay.
haven't played the original, so I don't have that frame of reference of how they cut levels. But that game was the budget was like $35 million, and that was a combined budget of the game and the movie. And because there was a Ratchet and Clank movie, I don't know if you know, it was a complete flop.
I
Um,
remember that movie.
yeah, I like it. It's not a great movie, but it's okay to watch.
You got
But
some good voice actors in there. John
yeah,
Goodman, I think, was in there.
yeah, he was. But it's suspected that the game was made for like 15 million, and that's like a great budget for that. Like, if you have like a frame of reference like this game only cost $15 million to make, which sounds like a lot, but at that point you start to realize like, yeah, this is a great game for that price.
Yeah, that's not actually at all. That actually makes me more impressed with that game because I mean, I like the gameplay of that remake. I think it feels amazing. The only
Yeah,
thing I didn't like was they tried to make Ratchet and Clank a bit more kid friendly, which it's fine, but the original, when you go back and play it, like it was made for like young adults and teenagers. So when I was playing
yeah.
it as, a 7-year old, it was, this like, oh my gosh, it's so cool. It was kind of like Sonic the Hedgehog in the 90s compared to Super Mario Brothers.
Well, the exact same thing happened with Spiral the Dragon. If you don't remember, the first Spiral the
Yeah.
Dragon game had a different voice actor, and they thought he sounded a little bit too mean, and so they changed
Mhm.
his voice actor. Was it Tom Kenny? Did they change it to Tom Kenny immediately, or was it that Hispanic voice actor that does a lot of voices? I don't remember.
I thought it was Tom Kenny for the new one only.
Yeah. Okay. So I know the original games. One had a different voice actor than two and three, and I don't remember the voice actor's name. And then I think they chose Tom Kenny for the remakes. But I don't remember for sure.
Okay.
But yeah, it's kind of like that where, even the first Spyro, but they changed that all the way in 1999, so it wasn't as abrasive. But yeah. Okay, well, let's move on. My next remake is actually, I think, one of the best looking games on Nintendo GameCube already, and I'll just love to see how far it goes. And it's also not a very liked game, even though it's awesome. That's Star Fox Adventures. Like, this
My
is the...
man, you know who you're talking to.
Oh, yeah?
I love Star Fox Adventures.
Yeah, because there were two Star Fox games on the GameCube. There was Star Fox Assault, which was basically a Star Fox game. It's really good. I would say it's probably better than 64, especially the multiplayer where you just like play with your friends and you can like try to hop from one R-Wing to the person behind you on top of theirs. It's really fun. But Star Fox Adventures is basically a Legend of Zelda game. It wasn't even a Star Fox game until like the last 6 months of development when Shigeru Miyamoto decided to just turn it into a Star Fox game, which is hilarious. But it's a good game, and people need to stop clowning on it for it being Star Fox when it probably doesn't deserve to be Star Fox, but it's really good. And so I'd love to see a remake of this because it is one of the best looking games on GameCube. Right there alongside like Metroid Prime. What's the main area in the game? Is it Horntail Hollow, something like that? It's like the first little village you're in that you start in, and that area looks awesome. And I would love to see it in like actual new foliage with like grass and beautiful trees that actually move in the wind and stuff. So yeah, Star Fox Adventures.
I love Star Fox Adventures. It's one of those games where I don't understand why people clown on it so much. Like, you have to kind of take your mind out of it not being a traditional Star Fox game because I guess, I mean, it's the third game in the Star Fox series, so they were still like in that experimenting mode. But I mean, I enjoy it. It's very much like you were saying, like the Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. It's an adventure game. There are some Star Fox elements of it, like in the beginning, I think you fly around on the R-Wing. The majority of the game is a third-person action-adventure game with you help out a dinosaur partner. It's been a while since I beat it.
Yeah, the little buddy, his name is Tricky, and he doesn't stop talking.
Yeah, that's the only annoying thing about that game.
Yeah, with this remake, just make a little button, toggle mute Tricky or not, and it'd be so good. Tricky is a little annoying. His like if you just listen to him like in the actual cutscenes, he's a little annoying at first. He's like that punky kid who doesn't want to listen, and then he kind of grows on you. But if you add that punky kid in the cutscenes, and then constantly he just has his little quirks that he says over and over and over again, it gets a little old at that point, So I think that's the most annoying part. And then when you try and trade stuff in, that guy says, "No, that's too loud," it's just, this game's so good.
It's funny. It's a fun game. Like, if you want to have fun, like, don't pay too much for it. I think back in the day, I paid like $8.99 for it or something like that, absurdly cheap. But I mean, it's a good game. I think it's worth somebody's time. And like you were saying, it's one of the best looking GameCube games. I remember the fur effects for specifically his tail look incredible.
Yeah, because I just booted that game up the other day to see if this was going to be one of my options. And the fur still looks really good. Looking at it now, you can kind of see, okay, it's like textures, but the way they move the textures, it isn't like, it's kind of like they have textures that always face you, and they place those textures in certain spot. Like, it's actually done really well. So someone who like has an eye for it now can see this is how they did it, but it still looks really good.
Yeah, I agree. Star Fox Adventures definitely is. And I would even say, like, bundle it with Star Fox Assault and put an online mode for that multiplayer for Assault.
Yeah, we just need Star Fox again at all. But yeah.
I know. Star Fox 64, I love to death. But I agree. Star Fox Adventures is highly underrated.
Yeah.
Okay, so for myself, this year, I had two of my favorite games get remade. Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door, and most recently Epic Mickey, which two games I would have never expected to get remade. And they both came out in the same year. It was amazing.
Yeah.
In retrospect, however, while playing The Thousand Year Door and then going back to the original, as much as I wanted a remake, it didn't really need a remake. I would have actually much preferred a remake of the first Paper Mario game, which drastically needs a graphic overhaul, in my opinion. The Thousand Year Door, in my opinion, established what Paper Mario looks like to this day, and it still looks incredible. Paper Mario, however, does need a very drastic graphic overhaul. There's nothing gameplay wise that really needs an overhaul, but simply looking at it graphically compared to every other game in the series, it needs an overhaul.
That one was basically the one that was the one on Nintendo 64, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So I played that when it first came out on the Switch, like N64 emulation console. I don't remember what it's called. That's the first time I ever played it, and I was like, "This is fine." It had like a 3D environment, didn't it? It was before the 2D like papercraft look, and so yeah, I can kind of see how that would kind of use one. Kind of like the Super Mario RPG. Would you prefer that art style or that art style for the 3D environment, and then a papercraft for Mario? Of course, I think he's papercraft in that, isn't he?
I don't know, because that, like, yeah, you bring up an interesting point, because I think I said that in my video where it's like the Thousand Year Door established the Paper Mario look, and Paper Mario Thousand Year Door felt more like a paper world, and Paper Mario felt more like a world with paper characters in it. So I guess you bring up a good point there. I don't know. I just know I need a graphic overhaul for that game. It's still fun to go, like, it still holds up to this game, like gameplay wise, and playing it, there's really no issues I have control wise. Maybe playing it with an N64 controller, because I have it on the N64, but it definitely needs a graphic overhaul compared to what the Thousand Year Door was.
Yeah. I think that makes a lot of sense. I've never played Thousand Year Door. I've seen plenty of videos of it at this point. I know it's like Arlo's favorite game. Like, he's obsessed with it. But yeah, I've still never like sat down and played it.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good.
I thought about picking up the remake, which fans seem not to love this remake. They think it's like it's fine, and that's kind of like the consensus from what I've seen.
It's coming from a player that played it almost every year growing up since I bought it. It was something that we were wishing for, but I think when we actually had it in our hands, it was kind of an unnecessary remake, in my opinion. Like, it's great to have it ported to the Switch. I know a lot of people were mad at it being 30 frames instead of 60 frames like the original is, but you don't tell. It's an RPG. It's not one of those things where it affects the game at all. I don't know. It's kind of the same game is all. It's kind of like a shrug your shoulders game. I think for you, since you've never played the original, it would be worth it in your time and money. But I mean, for someone like me that has the original, that can go back to the original, it was something that I guess was unnecessary.
Yeah, it's basically just like a slightly prettier, more accessible version. That's basically the benefits, right? It's just accessible. It'd be like Star Fox Adventures, where if that was just a straight port, basically, or Pikmin. Yeah. Okay. You ready for my next choice?
Yeah.
So this one, I think just needs this could almost be just a straight port of the new resolution. And it has an HD version on the PlayStation 3, but the PlayStation 3 like HD collections are notoriously bad. But that would be
Tell
like
me
Sly
you're talking
Cooper.
about Sly Cooper. Yeah!
Yeah, Sly Cooper. 100%. Yeah, I don't remember if this specific HD collection on PS3 isn't very good, but I know a lot of them aren't from PlayStation. And so Sly Cooper looks great. The cell shading looks great. It'd basically be a Wind Waker HD. And that would be all it needs, in my opinion. Even the gameplay, I think, is pretty much fine. It's been a couple years since I played it, but if I remember, the gameplay is just fine. Not just fine as in it's okay. I mean, like, just fine as in it's still like modernized and no issues. And so, yeah, it's not like Toy Story where the tank controls ruin the game. I won't say ruin because the speedrunners will be mad at me, but make it much less accessible. But yeah, it's like Cooper. Super easy choice. It could be very budget.
It's only like a game that takes you like, I don't know, like 4 or 5 hours to beat if you actually like nose the grindstone it.
Yeah. Yeah, and if it was supposed to be like another PlayStation game like this, Jack and Dexter, that'd probably need like actually more work because it's not cell shaded. but the cell shading on this makes it a lot easier. Just don't ruin it like that 13 game that got remade.
Oh yeah, that looked awful.
Yeah, yeah. But
I love Sly Cooper. That's one of the first games I remember ever seeing at a friend's house, and I was enamored by the world of that game. I love everything to do with that first game. I'm not as in love with the second and the third game as much as other people are. I still think the first game is like too perfect, where you just can't top that one. It's such a streamlined experience that I don't think you could ever top it. But I do agree. That game needs a modern remake. Yeah. I know it just got ported to the PS5, I think.
Oh, did it get a PS on the PS Plus stuff?
I think so, and you can purchase it for like $7.99 or something like that. But it's just a PS2 to emulated thing.
Yeah, okay. I may actually check that out. Like Toy Story 3 just got on the PS5.
Really?
It's the PSP and the PS2 version and not the PS3 version, which apparently is very good still. It's like an actual platformer. It's just a completely different game than the PS3 versions. And so I thought that was just an interesting choice. Probably because PS3, they still have to use the cloud system because they don't have their PS3 emulator public yet. You know, it supposedly works just fine. But yeah, Sly Cooper.
Yeah, that's a great choice. That's a really good one, and it still holds up to this day, in fact. All right, so you're pulling out some good games. I'm going to pull out a wonky game for you, my man. All right, Virtual Boy Wario Land.
Oh,
it's a game. Okay. It's a game because I actually had a fan send me his Virtual Boy collection to review and to play. So that was pretty nice of him. Yeah, it was amazing. I have almost all the Virtual Boy games and stuff. I mean, he just completely for free. It was amazing. Most of the Virtual Boy library, I'm not saying like you need to have that accessible for people. Almost every one of those games are boring, or they're stupid, or they're just experiences for like 30 seconds. Virtual Boy Wario Land, however, is an actual good game that's stuck on that stupid console. So I would like a modern day remake of it and do it like Wario Land Shake It, where it's in that hand-drawn animation. Oh, I would buy that instantly.
Yeah, I've never played any of the Wario games except for the GameCube one, and that was a totally different thing than Wario. That was Wario World? Mm-hmm. I don't remember, but it's a totally different thing because that's an actual 3D game. But I've seen the art of it and like the gameplay a lot, and I know the Wario Land Shake Dimension or Shake It. It's called something different in Europe and here. And I don't remember which is which, but that game looks awesome. Like, so if it even looked like an updated version of that, that'd be insane.
Yeah, it's one of those games that's just kind of there. It's the most baffling game on the Virtual Boy because out of all the games to make for Virtual Boy, it's a Wario Land game for before in a traditional or Mario platformer you did Wario. And it's a legitimately good game. And it's sadly just stuck there. I think the music is good. There's fun boss fights. I don't know how you would you'd have to change some things because it's Mutant Muds kind of where you can pop in and out of the backgrounds. The boss fights take place where there's things coming at you in the face. So I don't know what they would have to do necessarily, but I would love to see that be remade.
That sounds like it almost could have been like perfect for the 3DS.
Yeah, that's one like I'm surprised they never attempted to bring Virtual Boy emulation to the 3DS.
Yeah. To be fair, the 3DS functionality was pretty unutilized. So probably because they realized it was too expensive, they needed the 2DS, and so they couldn't make 3DS exclusive games. But yeah, that's a really good pick, and like these hand-drawn art styles, like Ori is completely hand-drawn, although a different art direction. And Ori is Ori and the Will of the Wisp is the best looking Xbox Series X game, funny enough, and it's all 2D textures except for Ori is 3D now. But yeah, okay. Well, I'll pick a little bit of a goofy pick then, since you just picked one. Something that shouldn't actually be remade, but it'd be so stupid that I'd love it. And if this company wanted to make like an easy $5 million This is like the way to do it. Just get limited run games to make a port of like the 3 Burger King games.
What?
And,
What?
yeah, that'd be awesome.
Okay, so you're gonna have to educate me a little bit because I know of them, but I don't. What were they exactly?
So there's 3 different ones. There's Sneak King, which is like a stealth game where you have to like give people whoppers in their pockets without them noticing or something like that. It's like wow. You play as the king. You remember that old like 2000? It was like 2004 mascot of Burger King, and it was the king. I don't think they have them anymore, and it was wild.
Did you buy them at Burger King or were they in traditional stores?
If you bought a meal, you got them from Burger King for free, and they released 3 of them. And what's interesting is this is like a single disc in here, and it has a version that works on both the original Xbox and the 360. So they had 2 executables on one disc, which is actually pretty interesting.
That is interesting.
Yeah, no other game did that, and I think only a couple of like the Xbox and Xbox 360 demo disc do that. But yeah, it's a really goofy experience. And then Pocket Bike Racer is literally just like a kart racing game. It's nothing special to it, if I remember. Although I haven't played it, so I may be wrong. And then Big Bumpin', and I have
Big
like
Bumpin'.
yeah, and it's like a bumper cars game. I don't know. I haven't played it yet, but yeah, I have these 2 sealed, which isn't very impressive because they're like I got all 3 sealed for like $5 on eBay. Like they're worth nothing.
I want to play those now. You got me intrigued.
Hey, listen, Burger King. If you want to make an easy $5 million, contact limited run games. Have them like remake these in like 2 months, and then sell it for $40, and you've made so much money. It's easy.
Yeah, maybe have it like come in like an actual like burger package or whatever. Like I don't know. You could do something with that.
Yeah, so
that's fun.
That'd be just such a wild, goofy pick that people would pick it up just because it's so silly, you know. Like I can picture Scott the Woz making a whole video on the Burger King remakes.
Yeah, if he's not already got, a video in the works or on it.
Yeah.
Does another like JonTron remake of the food games.
Yeah. Anyways, that's kind of a goofy pick, but what do you got next?
All right, so for me, I would love to see a remake of Earthbound like everybody else, but I present a question to you, sir. Would you like to see it in the style of the Link's Awakening remake?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I had never considered that.
I think that would be an incredible pick.
Yeah, that's
an incredible way to go.
That's a really good idea because I mean, Earthbound is basically a game about imagination in itself, and that Legend of Zelda game is all in a dream sequence, basically. Spoiler alert. And so it makes sense, and like everything is like kind of designed to look like a toy and stuff. That's really cool. That's a really cool idea. I think it'd actually be a benefit to the. I think it'd be good. Although I could go either way. Like they did that, or like just really beautiful sprite art. I wouldn't want an HD 2D remake of Earthbound. I think that's the completely wrong direction to go.
Okay.
But I think I would. I think you have a good idea with the 3D, plasticky toy looking models.
Yeah, I don't see it being remade in the same way Super Mario RPG was.
No.
And I don't see Nintendo giving us a bundle of 1, 2, 3. I'd never see that. If they're gonna remake one of them, they're gonna charge you a full $60, maybe even $70. Because what was it? The Wii U, when they re-released Earthbound, they charged an extra additional fee for it because they considered it a special release.
It was it had the international fee, didn't it? And that's what it was because they charged you more for import games.
Yes.
And it was like $4 or $5 more or something like that. Something silly. And so
yeah, which I mean, it's okay. Like it's Earthbound, so people will pay for it. But I don't know. I think if you're gonna remake Earthbound, go all the way and do it the Link's Awakening way. I think that's the only way, in my opinion, to really do it.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think you actually have like a really good idea there.
I mean, maybe do a cartoon style. Like, I just don't see any other way of them remaking it, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, What's another game that has like a cartoon style that it would work with? Um, I know a bunch, but I can't think of any off the top of my head. But just trying to think of references. I have one game on Steam. I think it's called like Life of a Dragon or something. I don't remember. But it's basically like what they did is they drew everything with crayons and then scanned it in and used those as sprites. And so everything's like
Oh, that's
like it looks like a
cool.
child drew it with a crayon. The whole everything in the level, the game, everything, the UI, and it's really cool. The game itself isn't the most fun game, but the art style is just so interesting that it makes you keep playing to see if anything changes. It doesn't, but it's like in the right direction. Like if you were to do something like that, but like at a larger scale, I don't know if that fits Earthbound, but that'd also be something really cool to think about.
Yeah, the more I think about an Earthbound remake and the more people want it, I just don't see them going the same way they did with Super Mario RPG, where it's like it's just a remake. You know what I mean? Like it's just a graphical. I feel like
Mm.
if you're gonna do it with a style like Yoshi's Woolly World style or the a claymation style. Like I think what was it? It's gonna probably win Best Art Direction this year at the Game Awards, but someone did like a full stop motion video game where they took and they did stop motion for the entire thing and they imported it kind of like you were saying with the drawings,
Mm.
and it's incredible looking. But I feel like you would have to do that for Earthbound.
Yeah. I feel like if you take any really unique art style and apply it to Earthbound, you could almost make it make sense. I mean, that game goes so many different directions in its story, anyways. And as long as you show like it's more than just a typical game, I think people are going to be happy with it. As long as it's like not completely crazy, of an art direction. But I think most unique art styles you could make work for that game.
Yeah. Because then if they want to go like, because you know how you erase a pencil? If
Hmm.
they wanted to, they could put like an actual realistic pencil, like have a Pikmin style too, where it's like some objects look real and then your characters look claymation. I don't know. I mean, I'm just spitballing, but I feel like you could easily do that for that game.
Yeah, that'd be cool. And you could almost make it um, like a child's playing pretend or something.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, good pick. I haven't played Earthbound all the way through. I started back on my SNES Mini and never finished it just because I got busy, not because I didn't dislike the game. Um, I don't, little secret, I don't play many games these days because I am just so busy. But um, yeah, so it's just one of those things where I stepped away from. I tend to play shorter games now, but I think I like that idea. How about an Xbox 360 game that runs on Series X? I tried avoiding most of these games that are backwards compatible because they already are a really good version. But Stuntman Ignition, uh, this is like a really unique game. It's a racing game with arcade style controls, and basically you're doing movie scenes as levels, which is not how they shoot films, but who cares? It's fun. You have like all these challenges along the map you have to do. So like as you approach something, a little like alert will pop up, like drive close to this car, do a U-turn, um, jump over this helicopter, and it like tells you all this stuff, and it makes you feel really cool. It's like there's not many games out there that make you feel as cool as this game does. Um, and so yeah, I complete this every year,
Oh,
which
okay,
doesn't take
cool.
long. If you know the game, you can complete it in like a couple hours. But most people to like beat everything would probably take like 7 hours maybe because you retry to get 5 stars and everything. But yeah, it's a really cool, unique experience. We've not had anything like it since. The visuals is the early Xbox era. It was an earlier Xbox 360 game. It started development from Atari, and it got shifted to THQ, and Atari sold it off. But so everything's like brown and greens and stuff. Um, but it's really cool. Like the first like movie, that's how it's kind of set up. There's like 6 movies you shoot, and each movie has 6 scenes in it, which are 6 levels. The first one's like a end of the world like volcano eruption movie, and it's really cool. Yeah, so I think everyone should check out this game, and I would just love it to actually look a little bit prettier, um, make it look a little bit more unique because it goes in that direction of trying to be realistic, but it's like a 2007 game, and and it doesn't necessarily pull it off the greatest, but the gameplay is like perfect.
Yeah, I think they could remake it. I mean, I wrote it down so then I can check it out later. But I mean, we've seen weirder things get remade. I mean, like we were talking about earlier, Croc's getting remade. So
Yeah,
who knows? It was kind of hard making a list, at least for me, because most of the games that like I was like, all right, you could remake this. It's like, oh yeah, they already remade it, like, or they made it HD like I was thinking Beyond Good and Evil, but then it's like, oh yeah, they literally just made like the anniversary edition or something like
yeah,
that.
yeah. The Stuntman Ignition falls in that category of like AA games that we don't have these days as well. So
Mm.
there's a big hole in the marketplace for something like this as well. You know, so maybe we'll get something like it someday. But because we used to get a lot of Stuntman type games, and then this is the last one. I think one is coming out next year, but it's like a 2D game, so it's not really the same as all the others have ever been. But yeah, I think there's a hole in the market for stunt driving games because there used to be a bunch.
Yeah, I agree. I think those are really fun. It kind of reminds me of oh, what was the game on the three Trials? You ever play Trials on the
Yeah,
360?
yeah. Trials is
Yeah, it
awesome.
reminds me of that. It reminds me about that of what you were saying.
Yeah, it's not that different. Like obviously you look at them side by side and they're very different, but like the core idea behind them is not that different. And so, yeah, I think it's a good, especially the newer Trials games where it's like, in fact, the latest one, I'm pretty sure you actually do a level where you film a movie scene. I think there's a level
Hmm.
where you're in, like you drive through Hollywood studios while they're filming, and it's kind of the same thing. But yeah, Trials is not a bad comparison to this.
Hmm. Yeah, I will have to check that out, dude. That sounds like a really fun game. All right, so I don't know how you can remake this necessarily. Give us Guitar Hero 1, 2, and 3.
100%.
Combined, remade. Don't give us any, live action people in the background like they tried to do with the last iteration of the series. Just give us Guitar Hero. I think the world is ready for it. We've been begging for the rhythm games back, actually. And I think that's the way to go. Do a Tony Hawk's Pro Skater remake, kind of, and combine the first three games. I know maybe music licensing would be pretty hard. That would be like
Super expensive.
most, yeah, it'd be the most difficult thing. But I think it'd be worth it in the end. Give us, a nice plastic controller. Charge the audience, 150 bucks, whatever is needed. There you go.
Of everything that we've listed off, I think this is actually like the one that's actually most possible
Really.
because Epic owns what are they called? Neversoft. Um,
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, because didn't they add like Fortnite Guitar Hero?
yeah, which is very different, but yeah, so they have something like this, just not like anything substantial. And there also was just an actual uh, guitar controller for Guitar Hero released for PlayStation and Xbox and PC. It's a major brand. Which one was it? They do a lot of like they did like the Xbox 360 and Xbox Duke controller.
Oh, I don't
Um,
know.
it's a big brand, but yeah, there's actual like guitars that were just re-released, like remade, and you can purchase now. And so like the market is like almost ready to do it, and Epic has the money. You know,
Yeah, I mean
Epic Games has a lot of
they
money.
have it, and you could do like or like maybe not even a remake of the first three games. Call it Guitar Hero Forever, and then just have it where you pay 60 bucks or something like that. They ship the controller to your house. It's a digital only game, and you have like I don't know, maybe where you can purchase songs for $5 a pop. Maybe that's a little too much, but or maybe a subscription service. I know there was that recent guitar game. What was it called?
Rocksmith,
That
Rocksmith,
has a subscription service,
yeah,
and you can access every song like ever created for that. So why not do the same thing for Guitar Hero?
yeah. I was actually gonna bring that up because I've played Rocksmith because I play actual guitar, and it's a pretty fun experience. I don't know if it teaches you guitar. I played the guitar before I ever played it, but it's a really good experience, and they did release their subscription model. I'm not subscribed to it, so I don't know exactly what it's like, but that seems like a smart direction to go if you're going to do something like that, especially with music licenses as expensive as they are. Um, you know, like you should hear what Hollywood pays for these like songs that get put in trailers. It's so stupid.
Yeah, I think I was reading an interview of Jack Black and how, like, for School of Rock, he was trying to get in. Oh, what was the song? It was one of the most difficult music licenses of all time, and he had to
Oh,
show the scene in order
it
to get
was
it.
it was someone that was it. So I may have heard this as well. Was it someone who Johnny Cash? Was it Johnny Cash? No, Johnny Cash wasn't in that. Never mind. So I had heard an interview recently about Johnny Cash right after he passed away. Um, Someone was trying to get a music license for a movie or a TV show, and it was notoriously hard to get. But his family loved that movie or scene so much that it was going to be in that they allowed it, which was very unlike most of their previous uh, discussions around like music licensing his music as he was getting towards the end of his life. But I think it was Johnny Cash. I may be wrong, but I'm almost certain it's Johnny Cash. But yeah, music licenses, they're crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you could do it. I mean, the ideas that we're throwing out are really good. Um, so maybe like Guitar Hero Forever would be a better idea than remaking the first three games and combining them. That would be a lot easier. But I miss rhythm games so much; it's not even funny.
Yeah, the problem with it is though we're not really in a couch co-op environment anymore, and I think couch co-op was almost required for those rhythm games. I mean, I remember I I went to school in the late 2000s and very early 2010s, and I was at band camp. I was a band geek, and at night when we were all in like the dorms, because we did it at a local college around here, and we were all in like the common room, and everyone was just playing Guitar Hero together. I think around that point it was Guitar Hero 3 because one of the really crazy flute players was playing through the fire and the flames, and everyone thought it was insane. And it really was a different era of gaming, and I don't know if it necessarily works anymore. That's kind of a disappointment, at least in the same way that it was, because it was very much a party game, and party
You're
games are
right.
hard to make these days. You know?
Yeah, you're right. I completely forgot about that. That's like one of the main appeals of it. I was just thinking like one player mode. I mean,
Yeah.
because I mean that's what I mostly did.
I did that a lot too, to be fair. Like I don't think there's absolutely no market for it, but a big part of Guitar Hero was playing it and then it being more fun when you go to parties. But without parties at all, or at least like any kind of social gathering at all, I don't know how the reach is. I'm not saying it's impossible. I just a publisher would question it if I'm questioning it, you know. So
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I don't know what you would do there, so I guess that's gonna be one that you can see easily, but at the same time, it's one of the ones that you're like, okay, but then the more you talk about it, it's like, hmm.
yeah. Um, and they could also do the gameplay of 1, 2, and 3 as Guitar Hero Forever. I don't think that's necessarily wrong. And have like in Guitar Hero World, they had that custom track editor where you could
I
make custom
forgot about
songs.
that.
Yeah, that was awesome. Like, and that was really a mistake by them because you could. They had like a marketplace. It wasn't really a marketplace, but it's like a hub where you could download other people's songs on there. Yeah, it almost eliminated the need for any other Guitar Hero for a long time. But it kind of did the thing that everyone thought would happen with 2D Mario once Mario Maker came out. But okay, my
Yeah.
next one is a childhood game. Everyone that played it seems to have a lot of nostalgia for it. I at one time called it my favorite game, and it's not now. It's actually a really bad game. But Rocket Power Beach Bandits. Do you know Rocket Power at all? I know you're
I know
younger than I
Rocket
am.
Power, but I was
Yeah,
not expecting Rocket Powered Beach Bandits.
yeah. This would have to be a full remake, like 100%. The game isn't very good looking. The gameplay isn't the greatest, but there's something really special about this game. Like it got a certain little bit of goofiness to it that we haven't seen since. Basically, the bad guy like steals the beach so he can build like a corporate office building there. Like it's so 2000s cartoons. It's awesome.
Mhm.
But yeah, you basically it's kind of like an open world game too. And this was released in what 2002, 2001, 2002. And you basically try and stop this guy. There's like enemies you fight. You can skateboard, rollerblade. You might be able to scooter, but I don't know if it's just skateboard and rollerblade. It's a really goofy experience, but it has a lot of problems that needs fixed. But it's really special.
I wrote it down.
Yeah, like you'll notice I try to pick a lot of games that are pretty special, and there's not much else like them.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think this kind of fits that category. And at
That
one time,
that's
I
a good
did
one.
love it. Yeah. And I know if you 100% the game or you beat the game, you get like a hoverboard at the end as well. Like an actual hoverboard. Yeah, like the bad guy has like a secret lab and stuff, and you get it there for some reason. And I think you make like an escape sequence on it at the end of the game. Yeah, it's really goofy. And so, yeah, I would love a remake of this. But like I said, you have to fix like a lot of stuff.
Yeah, you know what? That game might actually be remade because they're starting to remake a lot of those early cartoon video games or the children's games, I guess you would call them, or the
Yeah.
licensed kids cartoon games. Like,
Hmm.
what was it? Battle for Bikini Bottom?
Yeah.
Yeah, that got remade. So who knows? I mean,
Yeah.
maybe there could be a bunch of more of those. Well, I guess my next choice is a bit of a wonky one, but so Blizzard Entertainment nowadays, they've done really nothing of note, to be honest. But I still enjoy it, an occasional Overwatch match every once in a while. I will
Okay.
be those people. I will be that person. Um, I'm a massive fan of the first two World of Warcraft games or Warcraft games, Orcs versus
Oh, okay.
Humans and Dark Tides. I would adore because I still have my StarCraft big box edition up there. I would love if they did a remaster of the first two Warcraft games in the vein of what they did for StarCraft 1 and 2. I would adore that because going back to those first two Warcraft games, they're pretty abysmal, to be honest. They're fun, but they're definitely the early strategy games compared to StarCraft and StarCraft 2. So I would love to see a graphic overhaul, a UI overhaul, control overhaul, everything overhauled. I would adore that.
You'll have to educate me a little bit. What exactly is Warcraft like? Cause I've barely played any Blizzard games. I played a little bit of Overwatch back in the day, like a teeny bit, and that's like almost all I've ever played from them.
So Blizzard, I mean, growing up, I played a lot of PC games compared to console games. I never even liked video games that much growing up. Like I said, I had a PlayStation 1 and then a PC, but Twisted Metal 2 was the most I ever played on console, and even then it was like I'd rather be playing with Thomas the Tank Engine toys and stuff like that growing up. Um, so going over to PC, the first couple games that I was really into was Roller Coaster Tycoon.
Great game.
Um, Great game. I still play through it all the time, every year, boot it up. Um, StarCraft is a great game too. I recommend if you've never played that. Resource management game that you mix
Okay.
with gathering the most resources and then going to annihilate the other team. Um, and Warcraft
So,
is
so kind of like Age of Empires. Is that like a okay
yes. So
comparison?
think
Okay.
so think the same thing with Warcraft 1 and 2 where it's a very early Age of Empires. It's a little bit more of a slower game, so like if do you know Stronghold?
Yeah.
So strong it's a bit like Stronghold. It's not as fast as Age of Empires, but it's a bit more like Stronghold where you're doing more of a long game.
Okay.
But I mean, it's basically that. Like Orcs and Humans is the first game. Dark Tides, which it's got more of a piratey theme with water included. Um, there wasn't anything really improved between the two games. It's just more of the first game and the second game, kind of like Roller Coaster Tycoon 2 is.
Hmm.
Um, but I would just prefer like a massive overhaul. It's still in 4x3 if you play it on a new PC. Um, it's all mouse. There's no keyboard bindings from what I know of, and it's an early or late '90s, early '90s PC game. So it's in a desperate need of a update, and it's Blizzard's main mascot. Like, so I don't know why
Yeah.
they haven't yet.
I mean, Blizzard, they did a remake of a game they have, didn't they? Like kind of recently. It was like something classic.
Yeah, they did. They did. I think it was Warcraft 3 Reforged, and that was a big deal for a lot of fans. The
Okay.
problem with it was Warcraft 3 was a game still being played to this day,
Oh, okay.
with
Gotcha.
servers and everything still up. When they made Warcraft 3, they basically took down the original and combined it kind of like an Overwatch 2 in a way, where they killed the original off. The bad thing is Warcraft 3 Reforged had so many problems at launch. It's one of the most problematic launches ever put out on a for a major release. You got to look up a video on it. It's insane.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I kind of heard of that, but like I said, I don't know anything about Warcraft, so I'm gonna write that down and look at that. That's really interesting.
Yeah. Like I mean, they did StarCraft remastered, so just do Warcraft 1 and 2 remastered. I would love that.
Yeah. I think that makes a lot of sense. And like I think I'm like the only person who hasn't played like any Blizzard games, and so um, I don't know about the excitement from everyone else, but for me, it would be interesting enough to see something like that remade. We don't get a whole lot of like remakes of like the strategy side of like almost every single remake we get these days is like a platformer.
Yeah, they did
Or
Stronghold Classic Edition, I want to say, recently. And Roller Coaster Tycoon 1 and 2 had a
I saw that.
combined, and they called it Classic, which was a pretty good one, but it was basically just the original with widescreen now and
Hmm.
a few UI changes.
Wasn't there an actual like remake, but it was really bad? I remember thinking like Roller Coaster Tycoon World or something. I don't. There was one of
I
the
don't
Roller
know.
Coaster Tycoons that's considered really bad, and it's like a newerish one, but I don't know.
I don't know. Maybe that was. I don't know. I never really keep up with the newer ones because they're pretty bad.
Yeah, I'd rather just play like Jurassic World Evolution or something.
Are those fun? Because like I've never really gotten into recent park management simulators.
So Jurassic Park Evolution 1 is awesome, and it doesn't overstay its welcome. And I think that's why it stays awesome, because you play it for 8 hours and you've 100% the game, like the story. And yeah, because I feel like that game could get pretty old at like 12 hours in, um, and so I think that helps it a lot. The second one, so the first one is like you're building up Jurassic World on 5 different islands. The second one is you're rescuing dinosaurs from like um, the like random environment outside environment, and you're putting them in cages, and but it's not really like a park builder, but it still is. It's weird, and so I don't like that one as much. But the first one at least is really cool.
All
And
right,
there
I'll
is a
have to
park
pick it up
builder.
for PC.
Yeah, there is a park builder mode in the second one. It's just the campaign is not really that, or at least doesn't seem to be. I only did like the first 2 levels, and I was out. But yeah. Okay. Well, we'll get to my last pick, which again has like it's like a cult classic that anyone who's ever played it just absolutely loves, and it's a snowboarding game, which is the SSX series.
Oh yeah.
I chose Tricky specifically. So SSX 3 is my favorite game ever, but that plays amazing on Series X, and so I felt like Tricky is it probably needs a remake or something along that line more. Because this looks a lot like even on the original console, this looks a lot chunkier than 3. But also, I think most people love Tricky more. Like Tricky is much more arcadey, takes itself much less seriously. Everything's like a lot crazier, and like the jumps are crazier. The characters are more wacky. This has a lot more character than 3, but
Okay,
I
I
think
was
the
just
gameplay
about
is
to
not.
ask what's the difference because I have 3 on the PlayStation 2,
Yeah,
um, but I don't have Tricky.
yeah. 3 takes itself a little bit more seriously, not as serious as like the 2012 reboot, which took itself like a completely serious game. So there's still like character in it, but 3, I think the gameplay is just like really refined. But 2, if you're looking for like a arcadey, wacky experience that you can't replicate, then yeah, Tricky is what you'd want. But they're kind of the same game. It's just one is more wacky than the other, and they both have some faults. Like 3 is technically like a what's it called? It's not open world, but you go from the top of the mountain all the way to the bottom, and it's one giant path basically. Um, like no loading zones basically.
Oh, so
which
a
is really
bit
cool.
like Steep and stuff like that, like more
Yeah,
recently.
there are like races on that, but yeah, it's kind of like an early version of Steep. But it's tricky. You actually pick like courses around the world, and some of those get like really crazy. Like there's one where you like are racing inside of like a giant building in Tokyo, and when you it's just a giant circle, and as you get to the end of the lap, you get on this giant fan that throws your character up in the air and gets back on the top of the thing for the second lap. it's, like it's an actual um, an actual lap system for that specific race, which
Dude,
is
I'm
really
gonna have to pick
interesting.
up Tricky now. That sounds like fun.
Yeah, tricky is a lot of fun. So just depending on what you're looking for, I could see that where people make the case of either tricky is a better game or three is a better game, but tricky needs a remaster more than three does, for sure. Yeah, and so I think there's also like SSX, the original, which was PlayStation 2 exclusive. I've never played that one, but I don't know if that one's as good. But yeah, tricky is where they decided that they want to go kind of crazy, and then SSX3 they kind of kept it up a little bit, but just not quite as much. But yeah,
I miss snowboarding games so much. It seemed like we got so many in the early 2000s just because that was when extreme sports, was starting to level out a little bit. It wasn't, it was starting to not be as popular, kind of like Tony Hawk really
yeah,
hit its stride in the 90s. Um, but I don't know. I miss those games. I think, like we were talking about, like those double A games. It's like those snowboarding games were like not triple A, but they were those double A games where they were smaller ones. And growing up in Michigan, I mean, I really miss that.
yeah. EA Big going away, I think, is one of the saddest things in in video game history. As funny as that sounds, because they did a lot of stuff. Like EA Big did Freak Style, which is SSX, but it's dirt bike racing. So it's got these crazy tricks that are technically impossible. Because part of the appeal of SSX is like you do stuff like you take off your snowboard, put it around your neck, and you throw it around your neck like a saw blade, and it just spins around your neck like 15 times. You put it back on your feet. It's like so silly, and so you don't get games like that anymore. Everything takes itself either way too seriously, um, or it's like uh, games really try to stay serious at least for like most of the game, or you don't have games that ever go completely off the end like this, like
It's a lot like arcade car games. Like I really miss the wacky ones. Like the most recent ones that we've gotten in the last, I want to say 20 years is Onrush, which was a PlayStation 4 Xbox One
yeah,
game, which was incredible. I played that to death. They sadly had to take it off the stores and it's no longer online. The only way you can buy it is a disc, kind of like Godzilla PS4.
yeah.
And the the one on the Switch, that was the Nintendo game.
um it's an arcade game, right?
Yes, where like
um
you're in time, dinosaurs, and all of a sudden like the
yeah,
yeah.
what is that called? I have that, but I don't remember what it's called.
I don't
uh
remember it. I didn't purchase it yet,
oh,
but it's
Cruise and
fun.
Blast.
Cruise and Blast. I miss those wacky games. I really
Yeah,
do.
yeah. Yeah, I think Onrush would be one of the later games that was like that, because you got like Burnout Paradise was the last Burnout game, and that came out 20 or 18 years ago now.
Oh God, 18 years ago.
Somewhere around there. It was somewhere around 2006, 2007, and so it's getting
Oh,
close to that.
bad.
Maybe 2008, but yeah, it was mid late 2000s that came out, and we got its remaster, of course. But there's been nothing like that. There was a game that came out that was like the crash mode of Burnout, but it was only the crash mode, and it also wasn't as good, and it wasn't actually a Burnout game. Um, but that one was unfortunately like didn't live up to expectations. But yeah, yeah, these like arcadey like silly games don't exist anymore, and it's pretty sad.
Yeah, I mean, like maybe people will recommend some in the comments or whatever, but I mean, I definitely don't see them. And anytime I do see them, those are the games I'm like, oh my gosh, I got wishlist them instantly. Like we were talking about park simulator games. Did you see that they're making a Mars Attacks park simulator game?
That's awesome.
It's called
Uh,
Mars Attracts.
that's awesome. I actually like that idea. A lot of these like older games, kind of like that, or movies, are getting spin-off games. Like a few of like the older, goofier horror movies.
Yeah, like
Are
Killer
getting like
Clowns from
game
Outer
sequels.
Space.
Yeah,
That was one that came out of nowhere where I was like, of course, let's do it.
yeah. I guess that became like popular again because my son, my older son, saw it and like randomly, and he loved it. And then like literally 4 months later, they announced that that was getting a game. I'm like, okay, I guess it's being rediscovered. I don't know. Like if you go to Spirit of Halloween, you see Mars Attacks and Killer Clowns and stuff like that there. So it's like it's making a resurgence, even though it wasn't ever popular until now.
I don't know.
Which is
I always
interesting.
loved Killer Clowns. That was one that I watched all the time as a kid on VHS.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I think SSX Tricky falls right in that double A budget area where it makes a lot of sense. Very low risk, very high reward.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree. And especially nowadays with the graphics, with the snow particles and the effects, that would look incredible, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a game dev that's making a skiing game, and I think it's called Gumball's Downhill Adventure. And this solo dev like got like snow displacement working by himself as well, and like
Really?
and it is like a simple art style, but like this one guy, I think he's an artist now too, but these like two guys are making something that you look at it and you're like, these guys could remake SSX Tricky, like you see like the code base is there, for something that used to be very difficult, we can now do pretty easily, which is with like mesh displacement, which is basically like you take like the mesh, which is the snow, and you press it in, and you change the shape of the mesh. Like that's like not that complicated to do anymore. It used to be like a really crazy thing. So,
So let me ask you a question since you are a game developer. For
mm,
me personally, I have felt like video game graphics are the best they're going to be at this point in time. Obviously, we can go more photorealistic, but it's unnecessary. Like, I even think like this generation of consoles is the most depressing thing in the world because it felt so like we could have easily gone another 5 to 10 years in the PlayStation 4. I think. Um, I think that game graphics kind of peaked at the early PlayStation 4 era. Like that's just the best that uh, it's anything farther than that is unnecessary. So for you personally, when you're developing a game, I've seen your footage of your Buzz Lightyear game. I mean that looks like it was made by a professional, like not like a fan game, is what I want to say.
yeah,
Um, so what is your opinion on that? Like of game graphics, I guess.
yeah. So this is actually like this could be a whole discussion by itself. Honestly, I have a lot to say about this, but I'll
Go
keep it
ahead.
kind of short. But you know, game graphics, well, they'll continue to get incrementally better. Like we'll never hit the peak, but we're like basically there, right? Because you can always just
Hmm.
add more stuff to the environment. So we can always have like full 3D grass one day, and then not be a problem. Like you could always take it a step further. I think with realistic graphics, I mean, games like Horizon, um, like that's going to continue to look better because there's so much foliage, and foliage is really difficult because of how many polygons and tries it takes up and how much memory it takes to kind of handle that. But so we'll always be able to like add more detail, and that's like the point of realistic. But honestly, I think the bigger discussion is what's better at this point, realistic or like a stylized art style. Because I think a
What's your
lot of
opinion on
people,
that?
I think a lot of people are getting tired of realistic game art because I don't think it sells. Fun fact: realistic art is easier to make than stylized now. Like if you take like an ultra realistic visual style, that's easier to make than something stylized because you actually have to like think about what you're doing with the stylized art, and make it cohesive. Whereas, the ultra realistic stuff, if you wanted to, you could just do a 3D scan and get it. But if you were going to actually make it, there's like tons of reference art out there. Like if you want to make a record player, you just look at images online and you copy it, and you've got like a fully realistic one right there. Where stylized, this is something that we wanted to do with Toy Story, our Toy Story remake, where we specifically avoided realistic art and we wanted something stylized about halfway between the original Toy Story game and halfway between Spyro. So we didn't want to go full hand painted, but we kind of wanted like in that general area. And I think that's gonna be the next graphical hook, where the more stylized art is going to attract more people. Like Psychonauts 3, I think it's going to do even better than the second one because I think people are ready for something more unique. I mean, it's funny. I had like a Facebook memory the other day. My dad posted on Facebook that he was at like a mechanic shop and there was like a basketball game on the TV. This is 2016, and he's like, "This looks like I just saw his regular game. All of a sudden, I saw a kid with a controller in his hand. I realized it was NBA 2K16." And obviously, art, yeah, like the art looks better now than then, even. But yeah, I don't think we're going to have those discussions much more going forward, and people are kind of tired of it.
I'm one of those people, and I'm glad that you brought that up because it seems like more and more devs are going for the realistic choices, like you were saying. So something that seems more like a budget game will still have like the great graphics of a Horizon Zero Dawn, for example. The bad thing is I feel like so many games look the exact same nowadays. So what's popular now is like the PlayStation 1 era graphics that people like to copy for like horror games or if they want to do like a classic style platform in that era. But it stands out among those comparison to the realistic ones, like you were saying, stylized wise.
It wasn't but a few years ago people were saying, "Oh, this looks like a typical Unity game." People now are saying this looks like a typical Unreal game. If you put, because you can easily download realistic assets from the marketplace on Unreal Engine and put it in your game, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. By the way, like as a solo dev, you gotta do what you gotta do. But I do think there's a certain point where maybe we just need to change our art direction and make something more unique. Yeah, like people are starting to like really be offended by what looks like a typical Unreal Engine game, and so that's why I think we're getting close to a focus on stylized graphics. And I hope even the AAA market goes down. I don't want to ever go away from realistic completely. Like I do want my God of War games, my Spider-Man, my Horizon. I just think we need a bigger mix.
Yeah, you need that differentiation. Like you still need realistic. It's just gotten to a point where almost every single game goes for that singular style. And it would be the same. We would be making the same argument if every single style was in the PlayStation 1 style, for example.
Yeah, that's what Lethal Company is, right? Am I thinking of the right game?
Yeah, it is. Okay. But that's why that game stands out. Stardew Valley with its kind of in between SNES and NES style, like Genesis. That's its own style. What's another game that kind of has?
There's those like really artsy games. Like I may have the name wrong, but there was on Game Pass at one point like a game about a musician. I think it was called like The Escape Artist or something. I actually have the name completely wrong, but it was a really artsy game that, yeah, I mean, a AAA studio would never make, yeah, or even like cell shading games. There's like so few of those anymore.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the main thing that is going to appeal about a video game is the gameplay first and foremost. What are you doing? What are you playing? Does it control well? Maybe then the next thing that considers the frame rate, at least for me, for certain titles, obviously. But definitely style is the thing that will stand out the most.
Yeah.
Well, I guess my last game then, since you labeled off your last one, you a Godzilla fan?
Okay. Yes, but not as big as you. I've seen how big of a Godzilla fan you are, and
we're gonna have to have you on for some Godzilla talk then. But yeah. The Pipeworks Godzilla trilogy from the GameCube era to the Wii era, which was Godzilla Destroy All Monsters Melee, Godzilla Save the Earth, and then Godzilla Unleashed. Maybe just the first two games, which would be Save the Earth and Melee, but remake those, add online, and you've got my money there. Just having a monster fighting game.
So I know there was the PS4 game. Was that comparable at all to them or no?
No, because those were more. That was more like a, oh god, it was more like a cinematic game where Godzilla slowly moved the whole time. When you fought monsters, it was more like you punch, you use your shield, and that's it. maybe you use your atomic breath. It wasn't like the other games where it's like, you're throwing your enemy, and then you're chasing after him, and then Godzilla's running around. It wasn't as fun. It was more like, if you wanted to see like, it was more like a, what was the best way someone put it? It was like a Godzilla movie simulator.
Yeah. Okay. I would actually love to see a Godzilla game in the style of Rampage. Like we've not had Rampage in what 25 years now, since the PS1 I think was the last one. And so it's been a long time, and so yeah, I think I'd love a Godzilla game in that style where you're just trying to destroy the city. Very much like Godzilla. What's it called, Godzilla 1 or something, where the latest movie -1, where Godzilla just wants to cause havoc, and that's all he wants to do. It's not like Godzilla 2014 where he wants to help the humans. It's not like the Matthew Broderick one where Godzilla just wants to have a bunch of children inside of a stadium or something. Like in like he just wants to destroy the city. So I'd love like a Rampage style game.
Dude, we gotta have you on for Godzilla now, because it sounds like you could easily bounce off of me when it comes to that.
I will be fair. Like I haven't seen any of the older stuff that was like really hard to access, but I am a big like kaiju monster movie fan. Like all the King Kongs, I've seen all of those, even like the early ones. But basically, if it was released in America, I've seen it. Yeah, I've not seen any international films.
Did you like the Rampage movie? Because I actually really enjoyed it.
It was, and I very much dislike The Rock. But
I don't like
good.
The Rock, obviously, but like as far as the monster moments, it's like, yeah. It's it's entertaining.
Yeah, it was a lot better than I thought it would be.
Yeah, so I mean, when it comes to remakes, I feel like this generation is depressing mostly because that seems to be all we've gotten, or sequelitis, it seems like. But there's those moments and those times when remakes are necessary, like we've discussed. So, I guess closing statements. I don't know.
Yeah, honestly, like I actually was able to make like a bigger list than this, and I stopped at 8, and it's a good thing because we went on for a while. But yeah, I actually had like a lot of stuff, and I think you can make a case for most things being remade. And so if someone who's watching has like different opinions, there's almost certain a way to make those a valid like remake or remaster of some kind, more often than not. Like there's not that many games that don't need a remake or couldn't use a remake or even a remaster in some way or another. And so there's a very small pool of what could be. If Croc can get a remake, then I think almost anything can get a remake, because the original Croc is not that good.
Well,
I
it's
loved
not
it as a
even
kid,
that well known.
Yeah, and originally a Yoshi game, and Nintendo denied it, and so they just turned it into Croc. Yeah, game's wild. Yeah. Again, my name is Zachary McPhink. I run the channel Level Redesign, and where we basically take old games and we want to remake them to modern standards with updated graphics and try and make it look like actual production value. So we spent like 7 months on Toy Story 2 remake. So yeah, check us out. There's several of us working on the project now, which is really fun.
Go do it.
And y'all check out the rest of Zeth's videos. They're great.